Hi there. What is an independent woman really? I think that we have so many personal interpretations of what womanhood is um, that it's really important to start again with that redefinition and clarification of what womanhood is to you. And look at it from a lot of different angles, critically analyze and critically question what is it that you've been taught, what has been modeled for you, what have you observed that is or is not womanhood, and what does it mean to be independent in the context of womanhood, and going into different scenarios, different situations in your life, how do you bring independence as a woman into those contexts? We've got a lot of layers and complexities here. So I wanted to share today a little bit about a message from the beguines that I think is really powerful. It resonates with me and it's kind of humorous for a lot of different reasons that I'll share in a few minutes here. But I want to talk about what is an independent woman really, again, because I believe that there's so much expectation and so much pressure put on women today to behave a certain way, to dress a certain way, to say certain things, to follow certain movements. And if you don't do those things, you're deemed bad or you're deemed wrong because, as I mentioned previously, there tends to be a monopoly on truth held by one party over another. And when I say party in this case, I do mean it in a political sense. Although what I teach and what I do is not political, what I'm trying to do is help women discover themselves through ancient archetypal wisdom of womanhood, not through political feminism or politicalized females. I know that makes some people angry, but when we get down to it, when we're talking about the well-being of women, these are the messages that need to be told and that need to be heard right now. It's not political, it's not religious, it's scientific, and it's about what makes women women, regardless of orientation or anything else, biologically, immunologically, neuropsychologically, and spiritually. There's something deep inside of you that needs to be recalled if you're living in feminism, not womanhood. And you can live in both. They complement one another to some extent and can be lived out together to some extent. But I'm just bringing these messages for some critical thought, for some questioning as a woman who's gone through this herself. And getting back to the message from the beguines here then, what I want to talk about is the origin of the word beguine. And very interesting to me is that during my research and kind of inquiry about these women is that I can't find a clear reason or source of the term beguine. But the one that stands out to me the most, that I think is the most relatable to women today still, is this idea that the root of the word beguine came from men calling these women beguines with the essence of it kind of saying to them or making fun of them for being mumblers, like nonsensical mumblings is the exact term that keeps coming to mind that I recall from one of the books that I read, that really powerful men that felt threatened by these women called them beguines because of the assumption of them being nonsensical mumblers. Like if they had something to say, if they were educated, if they knew theology, if they could teach, if they owned their own businesses or had property, there's no way that they could actually make an influence or make a difference in the world. So they would call them this term, and eventually the women took beguine on as their badge of honor and badge of courage because they wanted to stand up and say, you want to call us that, that's fine, but that's not what we are, that's not who we are. We're going to keep being strong, we're going to keep owning property, we're going to keep investing and growing our annuities and just taking this term that some of these men were calling them and turning it back on them and saying, yeah, thank you, we love this. And seeing it last and grow over centuries is what's so fun and powerful to me, because I still see that today, where powerful, quote unquote, men, which I don't really believe are powerful if they have those fears and thoughts of women taking their place, or wow, that's great that a woman could make that much money. It's great that a woman could get that kind of schooling. Do you think she really knows? Those kinds of comments, right? They still come out today. It's just bizarre, but that's why that story about where the term beguine came from and how they really embraced that name for themselves resonates with me. I just find it amusing, and I think it's so relevant to what women still go through today in some settings. On the other hand, as beguines continued to develop who they were and what they were doing in the world, they were confident in the mission that they had. They were confident business owners. They had incredible business acumen and financial acumen. They invested wisely. They owned property. At least I think they own property, but in some cases I read and hear that they leased it. They didn't actually get to buy and sell. But anyhow, that's beside the point. In an application for today, thinking about women that are strong business women, strong stewards of what they believe their mission is in the world. And I really think fondly of the beguines worked. They were independent. They didn't have to be married, but if they wanted to leave that lifestyle, they could. And again, in modern days, I think there's so much expectation still culturally for a girl to grow into teenage years and become a lady and go to college, eventually find a husband, get married, have 2 kids, have a dog and a cat, and have this kind of vehicle and that kind of a job. Even though we're in a place where we're trying to disrupt systems and disrupt the norms and the cultures, but I think it's being done too aggressively and without the strategy and without the really deep understanding of what keeps a human well in the long term. You can't disrupt something like womanhood and turn it on its head and rip it apart and expect women to stay well. And with my work and studies in population health and public health and healthcare, health equity, and community organizing, I believe that's part of why we're seeing trends in adverse health and chronic health, especially for women. That'll be a whole different conversation we have, though. So again, getting back to what is an independent woman really, from the beguines I take away the message that an independent woman truly is willing to do deep inner work to explore herself. She's willing to put herself in a position where she's not a victim. She can earn a living. She can do that in a way that also allows her to serve and give back to a community of people that she feels passionate about. A lot of the beguines, whether it was a small community, like 1 to 4 women that lived in a house together, or a court beguinage where there would be thousands of women living in a community together, they did things like went out into the communities and cared for sick people. They had beguines that would go live with lepers in different communities and take care of them. They created infirmaries and hospice and hospitals. They went out into communities and they saved women and girls and boys from slavery and from sex trafficking, from brothels and from prostitution. They would relocate them if need be, and then put them back on their feet, get them out of the things that they had been trapped in, and empower them to become also independent, strong people who could contribute back to the world. So the message about independence that I get from them at the end of the day is that there's a voice inside of you, this intuition calling to you that if you continue to repress and suppress, you're only going to continue decaying your own well-being, your own spirit. But if you can slow down enough, go into stillness and quietude enough to hear that voice calling to you, the independence that you find within is going to provide you the strength. It's going to provide you the terrains and the contexts that will send you soaring into a place that you never thought you could go before. Like I said in my last video, that might sound really fuzzy and fluffy and esoteric and pretty, but in the way that the beguines did it, in the way that I teach and empower and offer to other people, there are very strategic, very tactful, skillful ways that you do this. It's not just thinking about it and Pollyanna, if I say I'm happy, then the world all of a sudden is a beautiful, wonderful place. It's not like that. So independence is about the hard work, the consistency, the dedication, the virtue, and the commitment to a moral compass that's built into you. Sometimes we stray away from that and fall off of it, but we can always come back to it. And independence isn't about running over other people, crushing other people on your way to prove a point. Independence, I believe, is so much more about collaboration than anybody is doing today in our world. And I believe it's about overcoming the fear of what people might see of you, what people might think of you, in a way that you can create a new model of change. You can create new models of living and being together that don't have to do with politics, that don't have to do with the structures of systems that are enforcing and promoting and continuing some of what's going on in the world today. So I think 2020 was a super strange year. It was difficult, but at the same time, at least for me, because I was aware of my growth and what I needed to do during the year, it was awful some days, but because of the growth and the learning that I opened up to, it was also the best year of my life. So very paradoxical 2020. And the intention that I have for 2021 and beyond is to help other people see the path that they have in front of them, the path of independence, the path of personal power and agency to do what they were put on this earth to do without second guessing it, without succumbing to the fears that live inside of them from the demons that creep up day after day, and old scripts, old templates that don't allow them to live, enjoy, and express their excellence. So my message for today from the beguines is find your independence, go inward to access the power that you have to be independent and strong. That doesn't necessarily mean that you live all alone and you walk over other people to get to where you want to go. Just keep that in mind. So critically think as you leave this session today. What is independence? What is womanhood? And in the different contexts of your life, how do you take independent womanhood with you? Thank you, and I'll see you again next time.